Did you get the email?
Okay, please don't buy a ticket.
Can you just look better? I'm excited.
Nashville Design Week.
Nashville Design Week.
Nashville Design Week is a platform for bold collaborations and creative conversations that promotes idea sharing, engage and educate the public, and strengthen our city's design culture.
We shine a spotlight.
We shine a spotlight.
We shine a spotlight on designers who are shaping the city's future, and we facilitate critical conversation about the industry's growth and impact.
This year, we're checking in with our community to hear about what's going on.
What's going on?
We're sharing progressive breakthroughs, innovations in our practices, and fresh ideas. And we're setting some intentions for the future of design in our city.
Hey Nashville, what's new? Hey Nashville, what's new?
Hey Nashville, what's new?
Hey you,
Hey, big
what's
guy.
new?
Thank you endlessly to our 2022 sponsors for helping us bring Nashville Design Week to life. Thank you to Platinum sponsor Design Public Group. Design Public Group takes the friction out of ancillary by connecting architects and designers to more than 500,000 of the highest quality products from more than 400 brands with the ability to easily search, sort, spec, share, and quote, all while fitting seamlessly into existing workflows. It's where great design is easy to find. Thank you for your generous sponsorship, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thank you to our gold sponsor, Belmont University, O'Moore College of Architecture and Design, and Watkins College of Art. At Belmont University, we are carefully developing artists, architects, and designers to create a better world. Learn more about our trailblazing programs with the O'Moore College of Architecture and Design and Watkins College of Art. Thank you to our silver sponsors. Founding sponsor, Pfeffer to Road Architecture. Pfeffer to Road is a fellowship of principled architects and designers inspired by the story of their clients and the places that become their way of life. Founding sponsor, Gresham Smith. Gresham Smith is a full-service architecture, engineering, and design firm specializing in solutions for life's most essential infrastructure and institutions. Design Light and Acuity Brands. Design Light is Middle Tennessee's premier lighting representative for Acuity Brands and over 100 other manufacturers, working together to keep the design and construction communities current on the latest lighting technology and trends. And founding sponsor, Hastings. Hastings Architecture is a dynamic, nationally recognized architecture and interior design practice located in the heart of downtown Nashville. Thank you to our copper sponsors, Aberdeen Studio, ESA, Smith G Studio, Textures Nashville, founding sponsor, Interface, Tuck Hinton Architecture and Design, founding sponsor, Alfred Williams and Company, and Lithographics. Thank you to our bronze sponsors, founding sponsor, Circa Creative Studios, EOA Architects, Dryden Architecture and Design, Mesa, and Design Object. And thank you to our media partners, Nashville Interiors, Hi-Fi Media, Nashville Scene, Lightning 100, and Fortify Fabrication. And to our public relations partner, Allison Duke, and to our brand partner, Rex Runyon. Nashville Design Week is a nonprofit organization and an entirely volunteer effort made possible by the tireless dedication of our team. Now, let's get started.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Burnett. I'm a volunteer program coordinator for Nashville Design Week 2022. On behalf of the entire Nashville Design Week team, I'd like to welcome you to Digital Architecture. The host for today's program is Casey Stanislaw. Casey brings over 15 years of experience to her role as the Director of Strategy at Hastings Architecture. As a senior associate at Hastings, Casey is responsible for strategic planning and pursuit of new business. Her interest in what's next for the profession has led to her curiosity in digital architecture and its potential impact on the profession. We thank you for being a part of Nashville Design Week 2022, and with that, I'll turn it over to Casey.
Thank you, Ryan. Oh, we're so excited to be here, guys. Design Week 2022. So pumped. We can't believe this is the 5th anniversary. It's gone by so quickly, and we're so pumped for this year's programming. Like Ryan said, I am Casey Stanislaw. I'm the Director of Strategy here at Hastings Architecture. We are a 90-person practice headquartered in downtown. You guys saw some of our amazing work in that feature video up front. I'd like to specifically thank my co-host and Hastings architectural designer, Joseph Platt. Say hi, Joseph. He's going to be helping out today with moderating our Q&A. I'd like to also thank Design Week directors Katie Laughinghouse, Shanice Brown, and Ava Allen, along with our program coordinator and Hastings architectural designer Ryan Burnett, for all your help putting together this incredible panel. People inside the Hastings studio know that I've been really excited for this conversation. The metaverse as a buzzword has reached a fevered pitch over the past 2 years, but there's still so many questions that many of us in the industry have about the difference between designing digitally, which we have done for decades, and designing for the digital realm. NFTs of land plots in Decentraland and Sandbox are commanding sale prices in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and massive companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers, JP Morgan, HSBC, and Samsung have all purchased digital land plots, which they intend to develop. So digital commissions for architects are certainly in our future. I am proud and honored to introduce our 3 panelists today. Isa Marcachuli is a project leader and urban designer of BIG in New York City. She joined BIG in 2017 and is working with clients such as Google, Icon Build, and the Metals Company. Isa specializes in leading research-driven master plans that bring a focus to how we interact with technology and ecology. Her experience ranges from BIG's notable Silicon Island master plan, a new 2,300-acre island in Penang, Malaysia, to defining the role of architects in BIG's growing body of metaverse projects. Welcome, Isa. Vishu Bhushan, lead designer of Zaha Hadid Architects, leads the firm's computational and design research group. He is also a lecturer at the University of College in London. He leads the design research on computational geometries with specific interests on structure and fabrication-aware tectonics and the development of software-agnostic computational frameworks to explore it. He's taught and presented at several institutions, international workshops, and professional CAD conferences. Welcome, Vishu. And finally, last but not least, George Balaika is the co-founder and CEO at Voxel Architects. Through Voxel, he is helping brands and blockchain communities build a digital presence in leading virtual worlds, while also developing assets and infrastructure solutions that aid in the metaverse's rapid expansion. Leading a team of 25 people, George has carried out challenging 3D construction projects for renowned companies and personalities such as Consensus, Sotheby's, MetaMask, Elvis Presley, and so much more. Welcome, George. We're really excited to have you guys. So how this is going to work is each of our panelists is going to give us a brief 10-minute presentation on themselves and the work that they're doing in the digital space. We will have about a 30-minute moderated conversation, and then we'll spend 30 minutes opening it up to the floor and audience for questions and answers. So with all of that, I'd like to hand it over to Isa to take over and start the presentation portion of the panel.
Great. Thank you so much, Casey, and thank you, National Design Week, for hosting us. I'm very excited for this panel. Okay, let me share my screen here. And I'd like to start by introducing the work that BIG has been doing in the metaverse, also, and a bit of our approach to how we are engaging with digital architecture. So I wanted to talk a little bit about designing in and out of the metaverse as we've been approaching it. And starting with what the hell is the metaverse? Well, it's this massively scaled, interoperable network with 3D digital worlds, synchronous and persistently, and allowing to host an unlimited number of users. Basically, this is the super long definition that was written by Matthew Ball. But in short, the way that we like to approach it is to say, the universe is the world of human experience, and the metaverse is the digital layer that can be experienced between the physical and the virtual. So in fiction, we've seen it already, all sorts of ways. In fact, the metaverse term was coined in 1992 in the book Snow Crash. Since then, it has continued to, kind of enlighten our imaginations. mostly in dystopic ways, as we saw in The Matrix, where people were fully immersed in the virtual world, in Ready Player One, where it actually became such a crucial part of society that government, that like this is part of the story, actually is handing out the hardware and like sponsoring hardware for citizens, because that was the way of like continuing the culture. And even in things like Inception, where we're starting to see that, the connection between our brain and our imagination, the spaces that we create beyond our physical world. So the first question is really, how will it be experienced? And there is a full spectrum between, what's most connected to reality and what's most connected to virtuality. And we like to think of this as really a seam between reality and virtuality, and really excited about kind of the expansion of it, where we're going to be mostly living in the space of augmented reality and augmented virtuality. In fact, we already inhabit this realm. It's just going to keep on expanding. So on the side of virtual immersion, the way that you would engage with these type of metaverses would be through hardware that's quite immersive. It's trying to tack onto as many of your senses so that you feel like you're entering these 3D virtual realms. But there is limitations to the full immersion. One, the hardware itself, like it tends to have a little bit of a limited field of vision as it is now. But the real key difference is that as immersion goes up, portability goes down. So we've been also really excited about these kind of hybrid spaces. For example, the digital immersion rooms, even engaging with your laptop is, the most common way of entering the metaverse today. And in some ways, we've already become cyborgs. We have our phones on us at all times. We even, use AirPods as a way of carrying this digital layer with us at all times. So the key thing about the metaverse in the future is really that there is an interoperability between all of these hardwares, where there's a spectrum from most immersed to least immersed. For example, from being with the headset all the way to just having your AirPods on, and then that also will has another scale of most access to information and limited access to information. But the key is that both physical and virtual visitors should be able to converge in these spaces. And this is how the metaverse becomes really relevant to every single person as it continues to develop in the future. This was really beautifully presented in the movie Her, where really the metaverse became about essentially interactivity without even though not everybody is accessing the metaverse in the same way. So you see some instances in the movie where he's in this room where he's projected all of a scene, and he's traveling around and playing in this virtual world. And then you see other scenes where he actually goes out to the beach and is carrying his Scarlett Johansson character around and whispering in his ears. So all of these are versions of what the metaverse can look like in the future. But the question is, what are we going to be doing there? And in a lot of ways, we want to create a future where we don't use websites, we use web spaces. So all of the programs that we already designed for in the real world have an equal and, let's say, parallel program in the metaverse itself. So everything from working and learning, creating, shopping, and even living. You can start to imagine that a lot of the functions that you do in the physical world translate a little differently, to your virtual world, but they still exist. So these metaverse experiments have actually started popping up all over, and they're all different ways of giving form to the internet. Just to give a brief overview of maybe some of the top ones, we've seen that there's there's many that keep on popping up on a day-to-day basis. But what we started studying was just kind of what are the key differences between each, and what are the tools that people are using to create these virtual worlds. So things such as, how is land acquired on the metaverse? Most of them are actually selling land these days, but they're subdividing the spaces in many different ways. So some people are using parcels like crypto voxels, others are using equal grids, and you almost buy the 3D pixels within it, and Sandbox, where you actually have a varied grid. So space allocation becomes really, really key to how you start building these metaverse worlds. Is there a public and a sense of private? Are there spaces that can actually just be for the flow of people? What is the role of streets per se, and do they really need to exist? And also, how are you engaging with scarcity? Do you have unlimited resources, or are things falsely scarce where you actually have to buy, things to construct? So all of this is to say that we can start to imagine a planetary rulebook that defines the difference between our reality and virtuality. And from there, start to determine which rules do you want to play by. So for example, in the real world, of course, we have gravity and one seaplane axis. Maybe all of a sudden in virtuality, you can have multiple seaplanes, so you can walk on walls. There could be, let's see, that movement takes energy and time. Well, in the virtual world, maybe you're just zipping from place to place. Or scarcity of materials and scarcity of land, for example. There's no really energy or materials scarcity really required in the virtual realm. So how do you start to engage with the world that actually has this that's founded on an idea of almost opulence or excess, or you can really kind of do anything you want. But this all puts us in a question where, like, what are we, as designers, how are we transferring our knowledge from the physical world into the virtual world? So we know in architecture, all of the spaces that we design first have to withstand gravity. So we're using structure to help us with that. They need to be enclosed to protect us from the elements. There's, of course, programs and circulations to every building, and a ton of support space has to be dedicated in each building. But in the metaverse, you really kind of boil it down to just the functional necessities, which in the virtual world would just be program and circulation, right? And that starts to create the idea of the virtual vernacular. So program and circulation become your two key elements of design, and it basically frees up and opens up a new, totally different challenge in how we would approach designing buildings in the metaverse. And one of the ways that I like to think about it is essentially it starts to function a lot like exhibition design, because you're constantly asking yourself, what is the experience of moving from activity to activity? And what are the activities that happen within this, right? So lots of architecture already is designed and shaped by circulation. A lot of our big projects are, in fact, that's one of the core things, that the way that you move through the building, the way that, you engage with it is a key part of how it's designed and built. And we're seeing that this also is happening in a lot of existing metaverse architecture today, and that's traversing virtual spaces, because it's so much of what makes it a 3D virtual world becomes really, really important. So that being said, there are a lot of differences, and there's a lot of opportunities here in how we approach designing space in the virtual realm. And one of my favorite examples for this is actually concert halls. So concert halls in the real world have to be hyper specific, beautifully designed to optimize for your viewing angle, and of course, how the sound travels through the space. In contrast, you can see concerts like Travis Scott's, where in Fortnite, where really the virtual vernacular allows you to break typologies into a string of experiences. So all of a sudden, you don't need a building. You can actually host a concert as a series of different activities, all on a space as large as an island or as large as the world, right? So your limitations and your opportunities are really different. So we started thinking about what it means to design architecture in the metaverse, and what that could look like is different. We thought, okay, well, all sorts of different typologies, so they would all be guided by like kind of circulation and program. And one of our first attempts at, our first designs in the metaverse was the Vice headquarters in Decentraland, where you actually see that it's a building box on the outside, carved away by the circulation on the inside. And as you move through it, it's hosting you a different series of experiences. But the movement and your engagement with the building is actually one of the key experiences of visiting, right? So even just going up the stairs, you start to see all the possibilities, things that we can't really do in the real world, but you can do in the virtual world. And just the aspect of even moving through the building becomes just as important as the gallery spaces inside. But that's all to say that, there can be infinite metaverses, but only really one Earth. And we're particularly excited in how this new technology is going to shape the future of cities. So everything from hosting opportunities to host activism, education and wellness, culture, of course, as we're seeing with a lot of this NFT exhibition platforms, retail and entertainment. And the way that this is already improving the physical world, we saw Pokemon Go bring people together into public spaces. We see that local artists and businesses are really being given a new platform to show their work through NFT galleries. On-demand education has become so much more accessible, especially in fields like medicine, where you can actually engage with it while you're performing. And we talk a lot about digital twins, which is another place where architecture is going to be plugging in quite a bit and using metaverse technology as we move forward. So talking a bit more on the digital twin side of things, we started thinking about how cities today will bring in metaverse technologies to advance in the future. So if we start to think digital, or there is in the physical world, there's an infrastructure layer and a public and private realm layer. So public and private realm can define the level of human experience. This is where we're actually, enjoying the city, how we program it. And the infrastructure layer is really what makes it a possibility, and all the systems that go into, actually creating this stuff. So there's an equal and parallel version of this in the metaverse, where there's a digital asset management layer that's actually tracking all of the things that the infrastructure layer would have. It's optimizing our cities. It's creating all these essentially opportunities for both building this equivalent digital twin, but also doing kind of all the background stuff that we wouldn't necessarily jump in and perceive. And then there's the virtual realm, where that becomes your virtual experience layer, right? And this is where you start to bring in a lot of the things that are augmenting your reality in the physical world. There are also opportunities to travel to different cities and experience them from this point of view. So it's very tied to our senses and how we experience the city. So those two, virtual realm, the public and private realm, are intrinsically tied, and the infrastructure and the digital asset management layers are tied. So with the digital twin technology, we've been seeing a lot of advancements in 51 worlds. The first full digital twin of a city in China has started. We see startups like Startup Wabi that are actually teaching cars how to view and move through cities. And Niantic Lightship is super interesting because they want, just like they did in Pokemon Go, they're actually focusing on metaverse technologies that augment the physical world. So you engage with them in both a real and a virtual sense. So in our own projects, we've started working with Toyota to design the Toyota Woven City. This is a city in Japan that is meant to be a lab for actually testing how car and mobility technology is going to change in the future. And the key aspect to this being a successful test is that we need to build a digital twin that complements and tracks and manages all of the digital layers. But at the same time, it is what makes your experience in the city not only viable, but also something that you can engage with. So everything from how your packages arrive to your house to how safely you walk through the streets, this all counts on this type of technology to build the spaces. But then also, this is another layer of which you can engage with in the city. And for the same project, we actually started working with Squint Opera. We developed a platform called Spaceform. And this is a metaverse technology where you can actually use it to test the projects that you're in. You can immerse yourself, have meetings in this space. And what's exciting about it is that it's the same platform that we're starting to use to build the digital twin for Toyota Woven City. So right now, what you're experiencing is a potential meeting that could have happened on the site, and we keep on developing it as we go forward. But you could put, bring a whole group of people into this and actually experience the space ahead of time, which we also see as a really cool opportunity to have like community engagement, have people see the space before they ever even, before it's constructed or built. So it's a totally new advancement in the immersion of how we present our architecture. So yeah, and with that, I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Isa. Vishu, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you guys are seeing the screen.
You're good. You can see it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. First of all, many thanks, Isa and her team and National Design Week for the invitation. Excited to be here. And thanks to Isa for a very good introduction into what metaverse is. So I don't need to get into that. Thanks for that. A bit of introduction about myself. I am Vishu Bhushan. I'm affiliated to these two institutes. One is Zaha Hadid Architects, and I also teach at the Bartlett University College of London. And at these both the affiliations, I kind of tend to do these four things on the left between research and computation design, and how that can be decimated into architectural projects, into academics, etc. I'm part of the computation and design group, which was started in 2007 to carry out project independent research. And subsequently, as the research matures, it gets integrated into project delivery aspects for both online projects and also now more so on online projects. The research kind of situates between what is valuable to designers and what design tech or computation can do. And for design tech, we kind of borrow a lot from the mathematics, computer graphics, and game design industries, which is becoming quite more and more relevant when we talk about metaverse. While delivering online projects, we have to look into other realms such as structural analysis, computational form finding, etc. Within the team, as I was mentioning, we kind of do project independent research, develop toolkits for explorations, and then test it out in special interest projects or sandboxes. And once all of these, all the technologies mature, we kind of apply it to commercial projects. All of this is aided by a spatial technology stack, which I kind of lead the development of. It is software agnostic. And it shares a language of geometry because it's a visual language, and most of our research into the framework kind of comes from the geometry side of things. It seeks to gain knowledge from multiple industries, specifically looking at gaming and computer graphics, looking at discrete representation of geometries, which has become very important when we are talking about online and metaverse related architecture. The framework kind of allows us to do both ends, which is kind of looking at content generation for early stage and concept stage designs, and later stage delivery of projects as well when it is on the physical realization. And it integrates well with all of our platforms and using in the game industry such as Unreal and Twinmotion, but also on the architectural industry like Rhino, BIM, etc. So it's allowing the framework kind of allows us to deliver projects both on land and online, looking and varying from practice to academia as well. But today I'll be most focused on the last part of it, which is like metaverse and cyber physical spaces. So why are we interested in metaverse and cyber physical spaces? Apart from that being the buzzword currently, we like it because it allows for procedural content generation. So it's a home of computation and thereby allows for a lot of generation of content procedurally. It allows for a lot of variations, parametric and tectonic variations, which is very useful and which is something we as a computation driven team kind of look at metaverse for. More importantly, it also allows for user content interaction and user content generation and user content customization, which becomes very important when we are talking about metaverse and cyber physical spaces. And lastly, it's also because the technology is improving and it gives like high fidelity images. Like you can get real-time render of spaces such as what you see on screen currently. Some of the applications we are looking for these kind of online participatory systems, which comes from our knowledge into participatory housing, where it's like a platform designed for stakeholder participation. One of the early examples, Sandbox project, pilot project, we are looking to implement these is called the Beabu Residence in Roatan, where we are looking at an overview of factors to include all the stakeholders in a project come within a platform and are able to influence the project at an early stage. For this project specifically focused on end user interaction, like the end user who was going to buy the house, we had to create a kit of parts with, as you can see on screen, with this limited kit, you can already create a lot of variation. So as a user or the end user, they can customize their own houses using the platform. So this is kind of currently showcasing an early version of it, where using a limited kit of parts, you can already create thousands of variations as an end user. They can go from like a studio apartment to a multi-story residence, and all of this happens on a online platform. In order to create this platform, we as designers need to think of like gameplay actions. So we need to create this animation board where we kind of seek what should be the interaction of the end user and how do we set up these interactions in an online platform version. And this is current version of it. You can see like it's using gaming technologies such as Unreal and Twin Motion for the rendering. Looking at, and as an end user, you can come and play. And this is a multi-platform gaming interface where multiple users can be actually bidding or customizing the same unit. And then once they choose a unit type, they can also customize their interiors, choose variations. And as real-time technology becomes more and more accessible, you're also able to visualize how your home would look. Are you able to see out into the views, etc.? So this becomes quite important, and it's becoming a very powerful tool for engagement of end users. Similarly, a next level of that would be building upon our interactions with the housing side, was looking at participatory urbanism. In this case, trying to build up cyber urban incubators online first, and then lead it to physical realization. And as a pilot project in this area, we were looking at Liberland, which was in this case the metaverse, but powered by what is known as a company called Metaverse. It seeks to learn from its competitors such as Decentraland, but try to keep landmark buildings, which becomes landmarks for navigation, and then have the same strategy of pixelization or splitting it into parcels where users can invest into. So the major difference you can see on the right is like driven by voxels and pixels. On the left, it's more a design interface, like how can designers contribute into developing such a master plan. Apart from designing the overall master plan, we also design some key landmark buildings. In this case, looking at the assembly building or the government building, which they wanted it to be an open interface. So these are some early conceptual renders looking at how this space could be and how you can actually get around 10,000 people into the same platform and trying to visualize or be in the same space virtually. So these are still early stages of it. As the technology is maturing, I'm sure the rendering quality and all of that would also improve. Similarly, on the pixelization or the parcel development, the goal is again to have user participation. Here, whoever is going to invest in the space would be given a kit of parts. In this case, looking at an incubator or a workspace, they'll be given a kit of parts which they can customize and put it in a sequence how they want it, and then design their own headquarters or their own buildings. These are some early views of some of these aggregations, how the users have created such a space, and an early visual screenshot of what the interface could be used for, such as calling and meeting people, introducing it to clients, so on and so forth. So the view here is like the metaverse, which is currently being developed by Metaverse. You don't need, you can also design other spaces, some of the glimpses into it, as it is not structurally, it can be free. You can have floating spaces, floating disks, so on and so forth, which is we are kind of exploring currently. The view you're seeing is like an early version of the concept, which is currently being developed for actual implementation in the near future. When we have to, for the digital realm, now we are also looking at AI assisted assets. So it kind of involving user and democratization to such that they can create their own assets as well. And we have seen a lot of these things happening very recently with the coming of DALI or Midjourney and so on and so forth, similar which uses diffusion models. So for this specific one, we are looking at a collaboration with Refik Anadol, where we created an immersive room where you could experience these digitally created assets and how they are created. So as we know, these tools, it's a prompt to image kind of paradigm where the user kind of creates the prompt or writes a prompt in text, and the image is created from that. But the goal of the project was how to augment that with additional data sets such that the outputs we are generating is similar to the aura of the office. So in this case, additional renders and images were supplemented to give outputs which are similar to what we produce in-house. And that was presented as a immersive roof at the Seoul recently at the DDP Plaza. And this is kind of like a snapshot or a teaser into it. So how the room would also display what are the data which were used to generate the content, as well as kind of informing people of what are the different strategies to actually generate these kind of digital images. And additionally, some sculptural interpretations in collaboration with Refik Anadol Studio. One of the key areas we are kind of exploring now is looking at how we can convert these images into 3D assets, such that we straight go from text prompts to 3D assets. And the exhibition was showcasing some of the early work into that. Here you can see it's kind of ongoing research of how do we convert the left image into a 3D modeled asset, and then how to. So this is still very early stages, and there's continued research happening in that realm. On the last part, the opportunities which are coming of the online architecture is also designing for games. And this I would highlight with our recent collaboration with PUBG Mobile Battlegrounds, where we are designing a hospital building for a battleground map for PUBG. So here what we were exploring was user navigation in comparison to real world, where we are trying to keep the navigation in such that a lot more of the actors are seen. In this, because it's a battleground, you had to design spaces where people can hide. So it's kind of a bit counterintuitive in that sense to regular buildings, but still has these constraints of navigation embedded into the creation of digital spaces. And then the tools which were developed and were also to track these kind of user navigations, and then also develop a keen workflow between gaming industry and architectural industry. So it became kind of a stepping stone, and it enabled us the research we have been doing in geometry, which kind of took a lot of influence from the gaming industry, was kind of applied very quickly here. So this enabled us to deliver the project, as you see on screen, in like 6 to 8 weeks. What's also interesting is it enables to because even though it was in a gaming interface, through data collection, we could see that a lot of people, even though during gameplay we are actually visiting the building to just to view, they were suspending the gameplay to just to view the building and then subsequently start a minute or two later, which was kind of interesting insight which we got from the gaming industry. And also you get these kind of moments where things you never imagined, like how people would use the space to get a car into the space and navigate the space with the car. And these kind of user insights becomes very valuable. Now you can open a building virtually, see how it performs, and then make changes while realizing in the physical realm. So this becomes really powerful tools. And in that sense, online or cyber architecture becomes really important. I will leave you with a small video of how the gameplay is. And in this particular sense, we also had to consider navigation or accessibility through the roof, which is something which we don't generally do when we are designing building for in the physical realm. So these kind of interesting nuances are actually becoming part and making architectural designer much more nuanced, and which is as looking forward to a much more exciting period which is coming in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vishu. I think that what you're talking about with the interdisciplinary nature of this work and different parts and parties that are going to be part of it is really interesting and something that I want to definitely touch on after George presents. So take it away, George.
Sure. I'm just going to share my screen. 1 second. Let me know if you can see it. If you can see it, I'm just going to start up with a slideshow. So thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure. I love the part where Vishu was showcasing how the collaboration between PUBG and their architecture studio went. I think that actually makes a great point of the possibilities that architects will have in the future of game design, especially. So without further ado, I'm just going to start out with a quick introduction of myself. So I'm George Vileka. I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer of Voxel Architects. I am a metaverse architect. I am a designer. I come from the automotive design industry, and I'm a long-time gamer. So I've been playing a lot of games like The Sims, like Minecraft, like PUBG, that Vishu was showcasing. And I got really interested into the metaverse space in early 2020. So our company, what is our company about? So Voxel Architects is a metaverse native digital architecture studio. So we only build in a metaverse. Our mission is to turn our customers' dreams and ideas into reality through masterfully crafted, beautiful and interactive experiences in the metaverse. We have a team made up of professional architects, modelers, game developers, builders, designers, and concept artists. So we have like a broad array of skills within our company. We have architects that were converted from real architects, 3D modelers that work in the game industry, also in the architecture industry, and also we have developers that work in the game development industry that aid in the development of our projects. We have worked on over 100 projects so far, so since we opened up 3 years ago, and we have partnerships with the leading metaverses, including but not limited to Decentraland, Sandbox, Mona, and many others. So we offer full premium services, including architecture and design, 3D modeling, and game design and development. Other things that we are working on is a custom management custom content management system, which will allow people to manage their content within their metaverse build. So what we saw lacking in the virtual space was the ability to easily swap out your content like images, videos, 3D models within your virtual builds. You require a lot of technical knowledge. So we're trying to build a tool that will enable people to easily work around that. Also, in partnership with NFT Studios, which is also the parent company of Voxel Architects, we are helping brands and companies integrate into the Web3 ecosystem by creating things like NFT collections, NFT drops, and we integrate those within the buildings that we do in the metaverse. We add a layer of interactivity with the blockchain ecosystem. So what is the metaverse? I think it has been pointed out really well until now. So I'm just going to reinforce what it has been said. So the metaverse is an immersive and interactive shared virtual space that combines the physical and the digital worlds. The metaverse is not only a space for gaming, it covers multiple areas such as entertainment, which is a major one right now, education, which will be a very important industry that will take advantage of the metaverse technology, of the virtual world technology, art, which was basically the catalyst, the one that made all of this happen, office spaces, which we see, for example, in virtual worlds such as Horizon workrooms, and also one very, very important key factor is retail space. So basically the migration from a 2D shopping experience to a 3-dimensional shopping experience with an added blockchain layer to it. So we're in front of the future version of the internet. This is how I usually like to describe the metaverse. It's basically an evolution of the current internet that we know it. So where do we work? We work on the leading blockchain-based metaverses. We work in the Sandbox, Decentraland, Voxels, and Mona, and we're always open to explore new worlds. We work for brands, for artists, individuals, everyone who wants to have their own space into the metaverse. During the introduction, it has been mentioned, Casey mentioned that we work for brands like Sotheby's, like Consensus MetaMask. Recently, we just launched a build in Decentraland for one of the leading law firms in the US, Aaron Fox Schiff. And right now we're building a metaverse experience for Elvis Presley. So these are some of our clients and partners. The list is not fully updated, but these are just some of the companies and brands that we have worked with. And here's an example of a work that's in development by us. It's a metaverse fitness experience where you can see a wide array of brands showcasing their building, their product, and each of these buildings is going to be an interactive experience for the player to come in and engage with a brand. Some examples of the work that we've been doing in Decentraland. So on the top left corner, you could see the Ouroboros Fashion Week building, where when they hosted, Ouroboros is a digital fashion brand, and they hosted their latest metaverse clothes collection. And also it was the building was the host of a concert hosted by Grimes, where we created an interactive concert experience. On the right, you would see an art gallery. So it's an art gallery that we built in Decentraland. We call it the Infinite Gallery. It's a gallery that it doesn't have the normal circulation that you would see in a normal building. You would go inside, it looks like a normal gallery, but then you will have means to teleport from one place to another through using teleporters. So it actually has like some floating planets above that you cannot see here, which serve as different parts of the building that can only be accessed through teleportation. On the bottom left corner, there is another building that we did for Ogilvy, which is a leading advertising company in New York, where we created this kind of like university campus, which has at the entrance a floating, rotating pyramid right at the entrance. And on the right, There is an example of work that we did for Sotheby's. So in the Sotheby's building, there has been a Bored Apes Yacht Club exhibition where they have asked us to present 100 apes and 100 kennels and create like an interactive, interesting space. So to showcase the power of the metaverse, what we did is we turned the inside of the entire Sotheby's building into a swamp that would basically represent the Bored Apes native environment. So what I'm showing here is how crazy you can go with the metaverse buildings, because you are unconstrained by physical limitations. You would 100% not do what you're doing here in real life, or be like a real architectural challenge. But here in the metaverse, you can go absolutely crazy with a building that you're creating. For the next one, this is also the consensus building. Forgot to mention, features a floating bar on which you can teleport, and you can see the building in its entirety from above. Moving forward, this is an example of more of a digital twin area. So on the top left corner, there's the Meta Residence. It's a house that's actually in construction in Miami right now, and is going to be auctioned off early next year, which comes with this digital sandbox twin with a metaverse twist to it. It's a little bit of a secret. I'm not going to disclose it right now. On the right, there is a Chinese pagoda inspired by the traditional Chinese pagoda architecture, which features 5 different levels. Each level represents an element. On the bottom left corner, there is an experience that we have recently built for Frida Kahlo, which is Frida Kahlo's Red House in Mexico, which is an interactive experience that walks you through the entire house and teaches you about the life of Frida. It's a gamified experience, so you go inside and you have to complete some quests, and by completing these quests, you will learn about the life of Frida. And on the bottom right, one of the most iconic buildings in Decentraland, the Sotheby's building that we did about 1.5 to 2 years ago, has been a long time, which represents the Sotheby's headquarters in London digital twin in Decentraland. So to close off, some future prospects of the metaverse, some possible directions. So the metaverse, doesn't have only one definition or one direction, and what we see is that it has multiple possible ways of diverging from its current state. So one of the most possible scenarios would be a multiverse. So it's going to be the metaverse as we know it is going to be divided into multiple virtual worlds, like Decentraland, like the Sandbox, but not only limited to that. Perhaps in the future, there will be tools that will enable brands and companies and individuals to create their own virtual space. And that will be part of the metaverse. They will showcase this virtual space on their own websites. And that will open a lot more possibilities than we currently have. Another, let's say, direction of the metaverse is to have like a unique interactive virtual world. And by unique, I mean something that you probably saw in Ready Player One, when there is one single virtual world, one single metaverse, where all the interactions happen, all the interactions that you see right now on the internet happen. This is not something that will happen anytime soon, from what I'm seeing, and with the current state of technology, but it's something that will probably happen somewhere in the future. And of course, there's also the augmented reality aspect of it, and the augmented reality is how I see it. It's more of a bridge between, let's say, the metaverse and the real world. And this is something that we will see more and more in our day-to-day lives, where you have a lot of companies that are creating VR and AR glasses that enables you to see real-time information through the glasses that you wear. kind of a next step forward to what you currently have on the Instagram and Snapchat filters or the Pokemon Go on your mobile phone. Future of work. So by future of work, I mean that there's going to be a lot of new job opportunities that will open up because of the metaverse. We already saw during the pandemic that it was not that hard for people to work from home. And if we create an environment that is pleasant and efficient to work with, I don't see why that wouldn't be, a mass adopted in the future, and will probably, let's say, ditch in most part the office work, like going physically to the office and staying in a metaverse and working. And also the future of architecture with a lot of use cases that I just presented, that Vishu has presented with a PUBG. I really like that. I just keep repeating that, but I really love it. So yeah, this was our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Guys, the work that you're doing truly is incredible. I think that as we kind of step into the future, it's exciting to see the work that all three of you are doing across physical and virtual platforms. We have about 34 minutes left in our time together. So I want to make sure that our audience has an opportunity to ask questions. I encourage anybody to go into chat and ask a question. And I don't know if we can I'm sure Joseph has been listening this whole time, but bring Joseph back. And I can start off some questions and then he can pop in as we have questions from others in the audience. But to kick things off, I feel like this might be the obvious question, but I'm really curious about what this means for the role of the quote unquote architect, right? Like in traditional architecture, you have the constraints of physical space, and that's part of what makes good design go, is that you're figuring out this puzzle that does have the constraints of gravity and structural necessities. And I'm curious to your thoughts on whether the line between architecture and art become blurred in this new virtual space.
Isn't architecture a form of art as well?
Yeah, I think it is a form of art. Absolutely. The disciplines, I think, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about collaborating and working with programs that are gaming design or like UX design, right? Like I think about the structure of an architectural team changing quite a bit for something like this. When you're working on your projects, how are your partnerships and teams different from a physical building in real space?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with this, like a lot of similarities. In a real world building, we are kind of collaborating with an engineer, with a fabricator, with some, so there are anyway multiple stakeholders even there, like even a client. And when it comes to the gaming side or the metaverse side, there is similar set of stakeholders who contribute to the design and development of the project. Although the contributors might be different, the interactions you kind of have as a designer is very much similar, and they kind of drive it in a similar way. And that's kind of interesting in a sense that you need to use multiple tool sets now to talk to different stakeholders. And that's where like the interface, having a platform where all of us can talk to each other becomes interesting. And I think that's where like a lot of things are heading towards as well. And I kind of missed the first question. What was the question?
Oh, the first one, whether, this can virtual architecture be classified as architecture, or ultimately is it art?
Yeah, like even in the virtual space, we kind of notice that navigation and circulation has becomes a very important factor, just like in the physical world. Like even though there is no gravity, as Isa was also presenting, the navigation is an important part. Like if there's no way to navigate that space, people generally get lost and they get dizzy and then they exit the platform. But if there is like clear navigational strategies, which we believe like architects would bring in that, and that's why architects should be designing the metaverse as well as any other gaming side architecture is what we believe in.
And I'd like to add to that too. So many of these like platforms are developing as worlds, and this is actually like where I jumped into the metaverse side. Like I'm an urban designer. I'm also an architect, but the interest for me and one of the biggest roles I think architects can play is actually bringing the expertise and the knowledge of spatial understanding in general. But when you start talking about the scale of worlds, like how do you make intuitive navigation, as you're saying? How do you create senses of public space and ideas of like spaces for gathering that in some ways the metaverse has a tendency to feel quite private, even though you can get anywhere. There's a little bit of everyone owns something, everyone is investing in it, and actually having the understanding of how cities run, how people use them. This is another layer that, as it becomes more prevalent, it will be absolutely necessary. And we have the background, we have the experience in this, and maybe in a lot of ways, not in a very different way from what game designers have had in the past. So it's like it's a collaboration now.
Yeah, just to reinforce this idea, I also think that it's important to think that we are working with limited spaces in the metaverse. We have only, let's say, we can work on 4 parcels of land in Decentraland. When you're developing a game, and when you're developing a game from scratch, you are the ones usually that determine how big you want to make this map and how you want that flow of actions to go, right? Because I can have something that's very linear, that doesn't really focus on maximizing space, but focuses on the gameplay experience and where the player is going. But we as architects, metaverse architects, we have to focus on maximizing the space that has been given to us, at least in the virtual worlds that we are working in, while also making sure that it's optimized for everybody, and that the interactions that you make in the buildings account for something. You have to tell a story from the moment you enter the building till the moment you exit, and that's quite challenging in a limited space.
Yeah, and
those are interesting constraints which becomes part of the design. Like before, you are considering constraints of budget, economic budget to do a design, but now you need to consider polygon budget. Like, is your building experienced the same way by everyone using the computation we have currently? And those becomes parameters which drive the design, and these are newer constraints which we as designers need to consider while designing in the online world. Yeah. But it's very much similar to the physical in that sense. There are constraints.
Yeah, the critical thinking piece, I think, is something that's inherent to all design. I'm sure that we have a bunch of young people that are watching this now. Are there qualities to an architect that will be necessary when you guys look to hire people to work on projects like this that's unique and different to what you've looked at previously?
Definitely. For me, there is the creative aspect of it. I think creativity, it's one of the most important factors that you want to have when you hire someone working in the metaverse. There are also some other side factors, like what kind of software that person is using. You are not using, in most cases, traditional architectural software. You are not using necessarily Revit or AutoCAD or Rhino, but you are using more like polygon softwares like Blender or Maya. Also, another skill that would be really important to know at a base level, not as an advanced level, would be a little bit of coding, to know exactly how to read a line of code and how to create some basic interactions within those buildings. But those two that I just mentioned are just bonuses. I think if you want something very specific from an architect, it's creativity in the metaverse.
which I would actually say is like a really big opportunity for young architects right now. There's so much room and space and like desire, need, to design these spaces online. And in some ways, it feels like a new field, but because a lot of what we do know how to do, and hopefully, we are creative, we're thought to think in a spatial way. I find that the barrier of entry for learning those programs is not so difficult. It's something that, we have the capacity to do. It just takes a little bit of like, okay, let me jump in and learn how to do this. But it offers a lot of opportunities for, for young architects to even start freelancing, to join firms that are doing this. Like it's actually like I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit, you even have a lot more agency than you would in the real world, because you're not putting up a real build. So
Yeah, like adding on to that, like I think it's because the tools are so democratized, like it's easily available to a lot of people. I would say like a lot of these designers would become competitors and so easy to put things online now. So then you need to stand out from the crowd, and that becomes a critical point. Like how can you differentiate your workflows or your tools from what is your competitors' tools? And if you're able to stand out, you would naturally become an influencer as well in this social media environment, and then you will naturally come up, and it will be easier to get into any big firm of interest, or
That
you would
kind of
become a
leads
competitor.
straight into a question that we've had from an audience member. Kenny Stanley asks, what are the limitations of current technology in the metaverse? So if you guys could expand on that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, in terms of computation, is probably how many people can be in a given space. So depending on platforms, it varies from anywhere between hundreds to 10,000s. So that's kind of the range. So not all platforms are the same. So needs to be unified. So hopefully, as technology improves, like a lot more people can be part of the same space. Second would be like again, it's related to the same way as like the polygon budget. Like generally, because of the streaming part of things, you need the polygon budget is not very high, so you can't have really high resolution geometries, which is a constraint, but also a good constraint to design with. Yeah, and then apart from that, I think what Isa was kind of showing in her presentation, maybe she can touch upon it, was the interaction and immersive nature of things. There is a limitation there as well.
Yeah, and to speak to that, so there's limitations. So metaverse is composed of all these different industries, which is another part that's really exciting. And one of the key ones for how do we interact with it is the hardware. So there's limitations to the hardware as it exists today. Everything from the Oculus to Varjo, whatever they're called. Like these guys are super, super immersive. They're dependent on the streaming quality. They're dependent on, like all of these things coming together for you to feel truly immersed. But I find that, okay, so that's moving, and that's like a side stream that like will continue to improve. And as designers, we're actually like, we kind of are just like waiting for those technologies to continue to push forward. But one of the limitations that I find maybe most hindering from it being like the metaverse being something for everyone right now is that lack of interoperability, that it's quite difficult to basically, be a user on your phone. Like you can't access the majority of these metaverses, or you don't really interact with them in a mobile way. You can do it from your computer, or you can do it immersed. But it's actually the more people that can be using it and will need to use it and will want to use it at any given time, the way that we use social media today, that's when it's going to become like super integral to all parts of our lives.
That's
Definitely.
before we got on. Oh, go ahead, George. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add onto that. I think the ways that the metaverse can go, the ways it can develop is pretty much unlimited. We're just limited by the current hardware constraints, and how do we, as Isabella said, how do we bring it to as many devices as possible? So what are the trade-offs that you want to make if you're building a metaverse? If you are Decentraland, for example, what did you initially want to have? I want to have something that runs on web, and I want it to run smoothly, and I want to be able to create as many interactions as possible. Whereas you have something like the Sandbox that runs on a client base. Some may say that Sandbox, I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but some may say that Sandbox runs more smoothly and has more advanced graphics, but at what cost? Running in a browser. So I think this is also dependent on the choice of, let's say, the creator of the virtual world, and what is the target market of their product, and how they optimize it to run as good as possible on as many devices.
Great. I think we have another question from the audience from Amy Harden. They ask, does the focus on designing the metaverse dilute our architectural responsibilities on Earth?
I don't necessarily think that. I think there is going to be in the future a divergent path for the architects, whether they would choose to be real life architects or metaverse architects. Not everybody has to be a metaverse architect, and not everybody has to be a real life architect.
I also feel as if they're not mutually exclusive. Like, I totally agree that I think that designers will start to specialize. But, having one way of describing the metaverse that it's not just these virtual 3D platforms is that digital layer that can augment even our physical experience. So as we start to imagine, going through the city and basically all of the things that we look up on Google Maps, or all of this is dependent on a digital twin technology, which is intrinsically related with where the metaverse is going. So all of a sudden you start to see bridges between the physical world and the meta world. You start to see buildings like what George is doing that are exact digital twins. These are going to help homeowners keep track of their house, plan things within them. And from there, that's just one opportunity. You can imagine where this all goes, right? So in some ways, rather than thinking of it as a parallel world, I like to think about it as a tool, and one that we can actually just use to also complement our physical world.
Yeah, and that's on the other, just adding on to that, it can also be used to evaluate your designs, right? So you can open a building online, and you can have 1 million people come and see the building and see if it actually works, and those kind of insights become useful. It can be then help to upgrade your design for physical realization. So it's basically, it can be used in multiple ways. It's not a hindrance to any of the things. It's just an added technology to the design layers. So you can use it to your advantage however you wish to use it.
Vishu, that was my favorite part of one of the things you talked about. I loved the response that you got from uploading the hospital onto the game. So fascinating, because even as physical buildings that will do that, as you're saying, and that's a form of community engagement. That's a form of engaging with our clients, and just having that sense of actually interacting with the space, it is going to be another one of the many communication tools that we'll end up using as architects.
Yeah, so true.
Great. Thank you guys. Yeah, I think even with the companies like Ubisoft that helped with the Notre Dame fire back in 2019, video game developer to help archive that was such a really cool benefit that came out of digital twin processing. Another question we have from Carlos Romero. He thanks you guys for the great presentation, but they're saying it still feels like there's a distance between the creative minds building these infrastructures and its users. are you familiar with any brands bridging accessibility to local brands?
Yeah, so the distance like here is like any social media one, right? Like how people use Instagram, they will be using 3D web spaces soon, and that will bridge the gap, and that will make it more democratized for a lot of people to use it. At currently, because it's still early stages of investigation, there's like a lot of different players in the metaverse itself. So all the platforms are different. They're all still figuring out what needs to be the interfacing and so on and so forth. But as technology improves, all of this will get regulated. And similar to how we saw development of web pages from 2000s to now, you will see web spaces getting developed in the immediate future and getting regulated over a space of time, and that will make it more accessible to a wider audience, and which is probably one of the goals for the metaverse, is to reach as many people as possible, and all of the gaps would be filled up very soon.
Yeah, I guess to bridge onto that, I think Stephanie Hayden in the chat was asking if there was any ethical quandaries that you run into when designing in the metaverse, since it's such an unlimited space. Curious as to what you guys' thoughts are.
I read one of the ones that we talk about a lot is like, and maybe I'm not answering the question appropriately, but like the access to and the usability of and the role of public space in the internet is something that, like, ethically I think about a lot. A lot of these things, like one of the barriers of entry right now is actually like it has a little to do with like people don't know that they like how to get an account and how to get, do they need Bitcoin to do this? Like, how are they going to start engaging with it? This is like, it starts opening up a lot of questions, you know, and then it becomes a space that is a lot about like, I don't know, in a lot of ways about moving money, selling things, like all of this. But because it's such a great tool for gathering, and it's such a great tool for, you know, for meeting people who can be anywhere, there's a true need for a safe and connective public space on the internet. So there's everything, but that entails everything from, you know, the blockchain rules that get applied. So it's a technology thing, and it is also a design question.
We have a whole group of folks that are in our studio watching you guys from a big room downstairs. And kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, they're asking the question about whether the metaverse represents an accurate cross-section of like the population at large, right? And these, like, are there barriers for inclusion to this space?
Right now, I think one of the biggest things is that there are digital natives, and there are people who like are constantly being introduced to new technology. There's kids who, you know, grew up like knowing how to play with an iPad, and like even me, who sometimes I don't even know how to use my phone. So it's that part of it. I do think it presents like it's a design challenge, but also maybe from a computational side, like where you're starting to say like, okay, how do we make this as accessible for all of the people so that we can have a full spectrum of users, where right now I think it's for people that are very comfortable in digital, you know, means. A lot of gamers who have like always wanted to be a part of this, and people who are curious.
Definitely. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. The metaverse, as it started, when I started to build, I mostly build in blockchain-based virtual worlds. So there is the idea of decentralization staying at its base, right? And at least in the world that I'm building in. So I don't think there's any issue with like inclusions or ethics, because what the metaverse wants to be, it wants to be free, it wants to be uncensored, it wants to be you want to include as many people as possible. And even, for the audience that is not so experienced with tech, it makes it as easy as possible through web application. That's why a lot of virtual worlds that initially we have worked in crypto voxels, for example, which is now named voxels. It's a web application that is easily accessible by anybody, even on the mobile phone. Decentraland also accessible by web. So I think that is one of the strong points of these virtual worlds that I'm working in, at least. And also with this idea of like decentralization and freedom, I don't think the metaverse itself will have any constraints.
Yeah, and the interface, just to add on to that, the interfaces would become really simple as as things develop, where a lot more people can easily access it. Like we already see, like in 3 months, like the Storm Midjourney has created. Like 3 months ago, not many were even aware of this prompt to image kind of models. Now it's all over the internet. Like everyone is creating their own images because the interface is so simple. You just type in a text and you get the image. So like metaverse would also lead into that kind of UI space where you would want the user interface to be simple, so that more people would be able to use it and engage with it. And I think that's kind of also one of the challenges which will be facing metaverse, to make it accessible through simpler interfaces. Yeah, but we don't have to look very far ahead. We already know in 3 months what happened. So it's going to be rapidly becoming accessible soon.
Well, I think we have about 8 more minutes on our time, so I'm just trying to get in a couple more questions here before we run out. But we have one from Kenny Stanley, and they asked, do you expect one metaverse platform to gain popularity to the point of monopoly, or do you see the market continuing to grow across multiple platforms?
That's a really great question, and it's something that I actually included in the presentation. So there is a possibility of a virtual world being done so well, being so immersive that people will start playing on it. What is a monopoly essentially? It's basically, it has such a big user base that it controls the majority of the shares of all the other virtual worlds, right? So it's where the players choose to be. So a lot of monopolies don't end up monopolies because they want to be monopolies. They end up monopolies because they do such a great job that people want to be on their platform. I don't think it's the case at the moment. What I like to think about the metaverse, it's this interconnected virtual worlds on the internet. It's not one singular virtual world. It's about having like these multiple different experiences that you choose to be in. Sandbox is so different from Decentraland, for example. It's voxel based. Decentraland, it's poly based. You like the art style of Decentraland more, sure, go in Decentraland. You want something more realistic, go in Mona, go in Spatial. I think at the moment, the way that the virtual world will evolve and the website will evolve, all of them will have like this 3-dimensional aspect to it, and it's gonna, let's say, gravitate towards the fractionalized virtual worlds rather than one single unitary virtual world.
To add to that too, I like to think of so the metaverse is a really general term, and as George mentioned before, it's the evolution of the internet, right? So it's actually building off something that's very much there. The way that we use the internet today is that we don't just use one platform for all of the things that we do on the internet. We go to different websites, and what you can imagine is that maybe some of these different like metaverse worlds that are happening are the future equivalent of websites. And now every single time that someone has a shop, like there'll be different, like more connections in between them. It'll be more experiential, but I think that as George is saying, you would go to different places for different things. and I think it'll become really practical in the future too. Like, some places where like some platforms are really good for shopping, and that's it's basically like going on an online mall, and then there'll be like sub portions of it like within it that's like each brand. So, and each brand can have its own little experiential world. So, but I think it works a lot like the internet does today.
Yeah, it would be driven by features, like as both George and Issa were saying. It will be, if you want a certain feature, you would go to a certain, like even when we are doing this online webinar, like you chose, the current one chose to do it in big marker. In comparison, someone might do it in Zoom or some other platform. So similarly, that there will be that competition even in the metaverse platform, which will it's kind of a good to have that competition, and each one will have a specific feature which you would like to use, and thereby go to that. And yeah, it's going to be a healthy competition. So hopefully there's not one universal platform which has a monopoly over it.
Well, great. Well, I'd like to ask a question to the panel as well. Is if you're new to the metaverse in general, and if you're not even a gamer prior, is there a software platform that someone that wants to get their feet wet with the metaverse can jump into to start to learn a bit more about this ecosystem? Or what is the most like user-friendly one, I guess, you would recommend for someone to start out with, to experiment with?
Yeah, like Decentraland is, I think, one of the most common ones which people go to and start. And there is also Somnium Space, which is another. And George also mentioned a couple more, Mona, and yeah, these are all very common known spaces.
What's nice about Decentraland is that it already has so much like traffic, in the sense that a lot of people want to participate in it. So even if it's a good one for getting your feet wet, because you could go in there and explore and actually just find a lot of things like, oh, I didn't know, maybe someone didn't know that Sotheby's had a digital twin there. It's just kind of maybe as an eye-opening experience. Like, a lot of people have been investing in that one, so you could jump in and have a lot of fun.
Definitely. I also think Decentraland is one of the best places to start, because if you are an architect or a 3D modeler, you would understand immediately how to build in Decentraland. You will know that, if you're used to polymodeling, you can just work within the Decentraland constraints, and even, let's say, deploy one of your buildings and kind of play around with it and try to add some interactions to it. And what Decentraland offers is that it has a lot of versatility in terms of interactions, in terms of what you can do. So it's not only about like 3D modeling visualization, but it's also about how do you interact with the building. So that's why I would recommend that. Also, I would recommend Mona. Mona is works on a room-based system, so it's not like Decentraland, you're in this big open world. It's actually, you have to jump from one room to another, but it has really good graphics. You build the scenes in Unity, and you can visualize your project, and they also have like their standard interactions that you can put within your building. It's not, at the moment, it's not as versatile as Decentraland in terms of what you can code, but it's good to start with.
Yeah, adding on to that, apart from these platforms, there are also these platform providers who are always ready to collaborate. Like, even if you don't know how to do things, they will easily, if you send them a mail, you want to do this, and they will easily help you set up a platform very quickly. So, and that is where, like, tying back to the first question, like, it is a collaborative environment, and everyone is looking for designers. So you can just ping, and then you might be already working on a project designing for the metaverse. So it is a very collaborative in that sense, and a lot of people are actually looking forward to collaborate with designers and architects, which is kind of exciting.
Gosh, I think we're right at 1:00, everyone. So I want to thank you for your time. If anybody has any last comments, feel free to bring them up now. But this has been an incredible conversation, and just the beginning, I think, of something that's going to be very big in the years to come, for sure.
Yeah. Many thanks for the opportunity, and great to see and make new friends. I'll bet it's online, but I think that's the future, anyways.
Yeah, thank you so much, and so great to meet you all. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed this panel.
If you guys
Thanks
are
for
ever
having
in
us.
Nashville, please feel free to visit us. We can do an IRL experience.
We could go to the Batman building. I just learned about this.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Be sure I'll be in London in a few months, so I'll ping you when I'm there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can. Please do come and visit us.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. I don't know if Ryan is still behind the scenes. Yes, there he is.
Ryan. So I'm still here.
This has been great. We've had a really fun time. And to all of you out there virtually that have been with us for this hour and a half, thank you so much. This is incredible. I'm hoping to see any and all of you that are in person in Nashville tonight at the kickoff opening party for Design Week. And Ryan, take it away.
You summed it up pretty well, so this concludes the event. On behalf of the whole Nashville Design Week team, I want to thank the host, Casey, and all of our wonderful speakers, as well as all of the attendees for coming. As Casey said, come party with us tonight. The opening party will be going on, and I hope to see some of you there, as well as at some of the other events later this week. All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.